I'm Madison Vestal, a senior communications major here at Jacksonville University. I produced this segment on how the St. Johns River cleans itself. Being a Jacksonville native, I've been on the river my whole life and realize how important it is to the community to know what's happening to the river. The river is capable of cleaning itself, but if we just do our little part, it can help all the animals living in it.
We are traveling to different sites along the river and we're collecting water samples. Any water body has a potential to attenuate and deal with a certain amount of contaminants. However, in excess, there's a point where it's going to degrade. It's going to break down. We're going to see declines in population levels of phytoplankton, of fish species. We're not going to see as much biodiversity. So instead of having maybe 10 different species in an area, I mean, we might find 2. So there can be changes in population levels as well as the makeup of the population.
If I could change one thing about how the people in the city of Jacksonville relate to the river, I wish they would use it more and relate to it more. I feel the more that people make use of the river, whether that be walking along it, kayaking in it, fishing from it, boating from it, painting or taking pictures of it, the more they appreciate it and the better they'll treat it.
I think the research, not only does it get the students at JU involved, undergraduates, graduates, in original research and actually trying to care about this river that we know and love. But also, I think just highlighting some of the concerns, some of the issues that are occurring in the river is really important in the community.
The communication students are involved in this research project, representing an interdisciplinary approach to the research going on in the St. Johns River. Once the research has been completed, the communication students were charged with looking at that information and working to identify positive, proactive steps that members of our First Coast community could take to actually help the health of the river. While the communication students were not doing the actual sampling, they were documenting, taking video, taking photographs, and in the process learning all kinds of things about the river and the health of the river. Many people that will hear this information will not actually be a part of the science community or even a part of the university community. There are simple, proactive steps that everyday citizens could take that would really make a difference in the health of the St. Johns River.
Highlighting those issues can then help to conserve it and actually get more protection for the river for long term.
I'm Shami, and I'm a junior communications major at Jacksonville University, where I'm also the station manager of the Dolphin Channel News. I produced the septic tank maintenance segment of the St. Johns River project. While working on this project, I learned that septic tank maintenance is crucial to the well-being of the river, and that even though you can't see it, it's still impacting the river in big ways.
We all contribute to nutrient loading, and nutrients is fertilizer, animal waste, human waste from leaking septic systems. So if you have a septic tank, you have to have it inspected periodically to make sure that it's working properly. If you don't, over time, the material that makes up the tank can degrade, and eventually the waste that we're flushing down into our tank can start to leach down into the groundwater. And over time, if these nutrients are still in high concentrations, it can affect the whole ecology of the system. So if you think about the waste that we're discarding ammonia, nitrates and things through our fecal matter. So all those things that are collecting in this tank over time, if it's not taken care of, they can leak into our groundwater, into our aquifers, which is our drinking water. And it's something because you can't see it, it's underground. So it's hard for people to really imagine that being a problem. There are so many different things that could be impacting the river and the things that live in it. So it's important to just have like a baseline understanding of what is going on in the river. And when we see things changing from the baseline, we can start to ask questions of why these things might be changing.
I'm Sara Wicks, and I am a senior communications major, originally from Newfoundland, Canada. I am also a member of the JU women's soccer team. I produced the segment Pet-Friendly Waste. What I learned was the solution to pollution is not actually dilution. What I hope the audience takes away is that we, the people, have to help Mother Nature clean the river.
People have had pets for years and years, and the blooms that we've been having in the St. Johns have gotten worse and worse over the last decade or two. It's sort of like a giant concentrated pile of lawn fertilizer, right? And it does get washed into the gutters, and that does end up in the streams that then end up in the St. Johns. I'm not saying that those blooms are due to people mishandling pet waste, because I think that's something that's been going on for a long time, but it is something that is fairly easy to deal with that each individual can do. Encourage people to go out and visit it. Next time you're coming up with something to do, pack a picnic, bring your friends, bring the young and the old. Figure out when you're voting, if the people that you're voting for locally care about the river. That's huge. What do they support? Where are they going to put city funds? If you're volunteering, make sure that you're volunteering for groups that are for the river. Clean up after yourself. If you're fishing, make sure that you pick up the monofilament and you don't leave trash behind. Don't put cigarette butts and things that are unnatural in the body of water. Don't over-fertilize. Don't go with the old saying of the solution to pollution is dilution. That's no longer the case.
I'm Ashtyn Hiron, a senior communications major from Perth, Western Australia, and a member of the JU Women's Lacrosse team. I produced a segment on contaminants in the St. Johns River, and what I learned is that everything we do in our day-to-day life affects the health of the river. I hope that viewers can make simple and deliberate adjustments to their lifestyles to positively impact the river.
We are studying the impacts of land use on pollution in the St. Johns River, and we're particularly focusing on metal contaminants in the river and how different land use practices can affect the input of various metals in different areas. We've chosen some different tributaries. Some have land use that are primarily residential. Some have land use that surrounds them that are more wetlands, and some more forested areas. So we're going to look at how these changes in land use impact the metal pollutants that are found in those tributaries. We might find some wastewater treatment plants. There's industries that are along those tributaries, and those can all influence the different types of contaminants that are entering the St. Johns. For example, nitrogen and phosphorus, which are two nutrients that are heavily used, that we can reduce the amount of phosphorus-containing detergents that we use. We can reduce the amount of fertilizer that we put on our lawn. Things like that. That will decrease the inputs going into the river, and eventually the river will become healthier for that.
I'm Sylvia Dean, and I'm a junior communications major. Within this project, I was the producer for the Trash in the St. Johns River segment. What I hope people can learn from this video is that doing small things like throwing your cigarette butts on the ground instead of in the trash can can add such a negative effect in the long run, even though it seems small.
Protecting our river is going to be a collective effort. It is our river. The more we can educate the public about how to care for our river and protect it for longevity, I think the better. Throwing trash in the river is the most common mistake. And people think that the solution to pollution is dilution, which it's not. I mean, the St. Johns can only handle so much trash, so many contaminants. Being aware that anything that you throw down in the street, on the sidewalk, is going to eventually go into storm drains and make its way to the river. Again, it's going to break down, and we're going to see degradation of this river that we all love. But we all have an obligation to protect it and to collectively do things that will prevent pollution. And pollution that we do have, it can be remediated, and it can actually change and get better over time. So there are things that we can do to increase the state of the water quality as well.
We got it! Yay!